At the bottom of page 82, you guys struck out, or from providing separate toilets, locker room, and shower facilities. Like that was struck out of the old policy. You see it? So what is that saying? Like, so does that mean like if my daughter's on a swim team with a trans girl, she has to go in the locker room with a person with a penis? Is that what we're doing?
That's exactly what they're saying.
So we would.
So policy 5110.2, which is not what we're discussing today.
Quick to point out that policy 5110.2, which is the one that allows for this, is not what we're discussing today. I wonder why she's being so clear about that.
But that is the policy that speaks of non-discrimination guidelines related to students who are transgender or non-conforming. And within that policy, and I don't have it up right now, but there are legal rights and protections, and the locker room, restroom accessibility language is in that policy. So efforts are made.
All right. I'm going to warn you right up front. This one's going to make you angry, and this is why these laws need to be changed. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, you guys. Like I said, this story is going to make you mad, and I know because it made me mad. It comes to us from out of Westosha, Wisconsin, which I can't say that I'm at all familiar with, but I don't really think you have to know where it's at to be annoyed with this situation. And before anybody has to ask in the comments, I'm not wearing a hat today just because I got my hair cut and I felt like actually combing it for once, so no hat today, but there's nothing going on with me and Team MAGA. I'm not upset. I'm not angry. I'm not in protest. I'm just not wearing a hat today. But here's the deal. This story will really anger you, and when I'm done with it, I would urge you to look in the description box below, and I'm going to put a link there to another story that has more details on not only how this story came to pass, but also gives contact information to the school board members that are letting this happen. Because what's going on is this particular high school is allowing a boy that identifies as a girl to use the girls' locker room, and this is not behaving in a ladylike manner at all. And even though the article has the contact information, if I were to hit anybody up about it, any of the school board members, I would politely let them know that this story is catching traction and people are keeping their eye on it to see what actually plays out. Because you're going to hear this story is wrong on so many levels, and these girls are being wronged on so many levels that I don't really know how the school board has even let it get this far or let it become this much of a problem. But do not threaten anybody if you decide to contact any members of the school board. Do not harass them. Just send them a polite message letting them know, hey, we've got an eye on you. And before anybody tries to remind me that I have trans friends and this is what Nancy Mace is fighting against, here's the deal. My trans friends are nothing like this. Also, my trans friends are well into adulthood. From a generation when this would have never happened. And this is the reason that I think Nancy Mace needs to watch the way she's talking, because while I do support what she claims to be standing for, the way that she's talking leaves it open for people to call it discrimination. And if you leave that window open when you're dealing with professional victims, which is what the trans activists are, they are professional victims. They're very used to gaming the system. They're very used to getting their way. They're very used to manipulating things so that people feel bad for them and convincing people that this is the same as the civil rights movement. So when our legislators and lawmakers talk about these things, it's not the same as you or I talking about these things. And that's why Nancy Mace frustrates me with the rhetoric that she's using when dealing with these situations, because if you're going to introduce legislation to stop this from happening, then you do have to watch your wording. And I know some people would say the people that control the language control the argument. To a degree, yes. But like I said, if you're dealing with legal matters, you've got to make sure that it doesn't come off as discrimination. And with some of the things Nancy Mace has said, referring to trans women as trannies, referring to trans women as chicks with dicks, You're not a frat boy, Nancy. You're a lawmaker that's supposedly supposed to be standing up for women and women's rights, and you're smart enough to know that they will use that against you. And like I've told you guys before, I will end up making a full video about that, but even more has happened with Nancy Mace over the weekend, and I felt like this story is pressing enough that I wanted to get it out there. I've been doing some fun ones lately, and I'm gonna go back to doing some fun ones in the next couple of days, but this one I felt was important enough that I wanted people to actually hear what's going on, because like I said, these girls are being wronged on so many levels. So the name of this publication is the Kenosha County Eye, and the headline is "Parents of Female Students Outraged After Boy Parades Around Girls' Locker Room Naked, Exposing Himself at Westosha Central High School." So let's go. Several parents of female students have contacted KCE with a very serious concern. According to allegations shared with KCE by multiple sources, a boy has been using the girls' locker room to change at Westosha Central High School. He stares at the young girls while they change, and that makes them feel very uncomfortable. Some of the girls began to use the stalls to change. When they would exit, the boy would be exposing his penis and rubbing himself with lotion. He claimed to the girls that the lotion was to prevent chafing. The boy changes in full nude, often exposing his penis and testicles. Many girls, some or most freshmen, approached the gym teacher, Miranda Hopkins. Hopkins told the girls that the boy identifies as a girl, so they have to let him have access. Okay, that is not the way any of these protections were meant to be enforced. I don't know when people decided to go so heavy on self-ID, and I don't even think trans in junior high and high school should be a thing. I think that when it comes to dealing with transgender people, or more specifically, transsexual people, one, I think you should have to be an adult before that actually is considered to be your diagnosis. And two, if any special accommodations are going to be made for you as far as what facilities you're going to be using, then I think you should actually have to have a diagnosis from a medical professional stating that you do deal with gender dysphoria. Because this, what's being described, is not the behavior of a person that suffers from gender dysphoria. People that suffer from gender dysphoria do not want to expose themselves to you. They are in a lot of cases ashamed of their bodies. It brings them great shame that they have these bodies that don't line up with what's going on in their head. And I know some people would say, well, why are we feeding into these people's mental illness? Well, that's the thing about actual transsexual people. They usually don't want you to feed into their mental illness. They usually want to fly under the radar and just be able to live their lives and not call any attention to themselves. They're not looking for you to celebrate them. They're not looking for you to affirm them. They really are just trying to fly under the radar in a lot of cases and not deal with anything like this. So when people think that trans people are actually trying to be deviant in their behavior, that's usually not what's going on at all. These are people that self-ID as trans because they figured out that that's a way for them to be a perv and be inappropriate, just like this boy is right here. I wouldn't even call this person trans on any level. I would say that this is a boy that has figured out that this is a way for him to be a creep, and for some reason his parents are allowing it and the school board is enabling it because obviously they're still dealing with woke mentality, which I didn't know had spread to Wisconsin. I wouldn't imagine Wisconsin for being that, but I guess everything always starts off at the coast and then works its way in. So I could see the influence of New York and LA just finally beginning to work its way into the Midwest, and now Wisconsin is dealing with it. I expected better from you, Wisconsin. I'm going to be honest about that. There is a family locker room in the school that the girls started using, but Hopkins told the girls they can't use it and to stop stirring up drama. The girls then stopped changing in the locker room and went to gym class without the proper gym clothes on. The school punished them by marking down their grades and handing out unexcused absences. Okay, so I don't understand, if there is a family locker room and you have a person that identifies as trans, trans, I don't know why you can't just designate the family locker room to that particular person instead of having the girls go to the family locker room. That makes no sense at all. And if you listened at the beginning of the story when I played that clip, they mentioned gender nonconforming. Well, if you're gender nonconforming, which means you don't consider yourself to be male or female, you don't have any real assignment to the binary or either one of those two things in layman's terms, then why is the default to go to the women's bathroom? Why would the default not be for you to just go to the bathroom that aligns with what your actual sex is? That's what I never understand when they're talking about gender nonconforming, because they always assume or throw gender nonconforming into the girls' bathroom. If you have a person that's gender nonconforming or trans, why do you not just put them in the family locker room since you have a family locker room? And then when the girls exercise their right to modesty, their right to feel safe and protected, and they're like, okay, just not to make this a problem, we'll go to the family locker room. And then they have the gym teacher telling them that they're stirring up drama so they're not allowed to go to the family locker room. How out of her mind is this gym teacher to think that it's okay to tell these girls that they have no right to exercise their option to go to a space where they feel more comfortable if the space that's assigned to them is no longer a safe space? And I'm not a person who's using safe space in that woke type way or politically correct way. I'm saying that the family locker room is basically a refuge for these girls that are being harassed, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. They are being harassed and made to feel uncomfortable and made to feel unsafe in a space that is supposed to be designated for them. So they do the least dramatic thing ever and handle themselves in a more adult manner than most adults would be. Because a lot of adults would be like, no, this is our space. We want this person out of here. That's what most adults would be like. These girls are being even more grown up than most adults would be and saying, fine, if this is the space where this person is going to be changing, I'm going to remove myself from this situation and I will go to the family locker room. And then that's not allowed. So then they're just like, okay, well, if I have no place that I can change, that I can feel comfortable, that I can feel safe, that I'm not being exposed to things that I don't want to see or people that I don't want seeing me in a state of undress. So they're like, okay, so I just won't change it into gym clothes. And then they get their grades marked down and inexcused absences because they're offered no option that offers them safety and protection. How does that even make sense in anybody's world at all? Forget what you identify as, whether you're gay, straight, LGBT, queer, whatever you are. You're telling me that these girls have absolutely no option to say that I don't want to be a part of this. This is not the way any of this is supposed to work. This is not at all what LGBT rights are about. This is not at all what anything to do with the community that I came up in as far as the gay community would ever try to push on anybody. Multiple parents have called the school multiple times and the school leadership finally called, seemingly trying to address the issue. The girls were told that the boy is no longer allowed in the female locker room, but they said he isn't listening to the directive. So now the boy has been told not to be in the female locker room and he's still going to the female locker room. One girl was allegedly assaulted by the boy as she told him to, quote, put his dick away, and he pushed the girl. He was suspended for his violence and or smashing a Chromebook in a fit of rage against another student. Okay, so he pushed a girl and then he smashed somebody's Chromebook. It sounds like in two separate instances. Not only do I think that this student doesn't belong in the girls' locker room, I don't think that this student should even be in the school. Not about suspension, all the way expulsion. Between the violent behavior and the creepy behavior, there should be some loophole or something that allows them to just be like, hey, I don't think this kid needs to go here. I think they're being real loose with the way that they're enforcing these laws and guidelines, whether it's a school guidelines or a state law, and I can't imagine that there's not some sort of loophole that would allow them to get this student out of their school. Some students have told school staff that the boy has threatened threatened to shoot up the school, but they say the teachers laughed it off and told the students not to be dramatic. Okay, so we just had what happened less than a week ago in Madison, Wisconsin, and now you've got another student threatening to do the same thing, and it's not being taken seriously. The girls are being told not to be dramatic. I'm telling you guys, I'm going to go ahead and send an email myself. Don't think that I'm not. I'm actually going to send an email to each one of them and just be like, hey, I did a story on you guys, and I'm going to send them to this video because they don't realize that people are going to be paying attention to this. Maybe I'm going to tweet this at Nancy Mace. This would be one for her to get on. Forget worrying about the federal bathrooms. You guys have the most protection in the world. Worry about instances like this, where actual students, where actual young people are being victimized by this. That's the other thing that gets on my nerves about Nancy Mace. She didn't have a problem with all this until she was possibly going to be exposed to it. And now she's the biggest proponent of women's rights. But even as early as 2023, she was still pro-LGBT and fine with the pronouns and everything else. So keep that in mind when you're getting mad at me because I'm not just blindly supporting Nancy Mace. It didn't bother Nancy Mace until it affected her. And if she ignores a story like this, you'll know she's full of it. Because even if she can't do anything about it right now, legislatively, she can call a spotlight to it. She can make sure that people know that it's going on a much bigger level. And I'd be willing to bet that will make the school want to do everything within their power to do something about this, which I'm sure they have more options than what they've exercised so far. This boy, when he attended Salem, was also in constant trouble for violent behavior. One father told KCE, "I find it unacceptable that a 14-year-old girl is required to change in front of a 16-year-old boy to complete a required class in school. I don't feel like the district is taking this seriously." I don't feel like they are either. KEC made contact today with John Gendron, Westosha's administrator. He told us, quote, "Unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on your question regarding the student mentioned as it deals with student privacy, including student records and discipline." Okay, well then don't address it to the press, but just do something about it in your school system. KCE contacted a Kenosha County Sheriff's Office spokesman today who said the Sheriff's Office has not received a complaint about these allegations but will be looking into them. The Kenosha Unified School District just voted to allow boys in the girls' locker room and sports, and some wondered what could go wrong. Apparently, this is what could go wrong. We will keep you updated as we learn more. And I will keep you guys updated as we learn more. Because this is a story that I really want to see what happens with. This school needs to do right by these girls. Not only in what they're being exposed to, but in what they're allowed to choose to expose themselves to. When you leave people no options, you make them think that they're going to be voiceless and powerless for the rest of their lives. Like, that's why I get so angry about these particular stories. Like, it happened not too long ago in a story I did where girls were just being forced to play against a young boy. And it was some young grade. I can't even remember anymore. It was like middle school or younger. And the female students were being punished for saying that they didn't want to play with a biological male. And they were getting in trouble for it. They were being suspended from the team. And when you punish people for standing up for themselves, for exercising their right to not only free speech, but also just their right to feel safe, then I think it's just a really bad thing to put in their heads at such a young age that they'll never be able to have a voice, or they'll never be able to actually voice that they're not comfortable with something, because they'll forever remember when they were in high school and they were being punished for just speaking out. And like I said, we're talking about 14 here. Like, that's an age where you really do take things as like, oh, this is just the way the world works. That's when you're figuring out what adulthood is going to be like, or what it's going to be like moving forward. And so I just think it's a terrible thing to teach these young girls, if they have a problem with anything, if they don't feel safe, if there are actual threats being made, that they should just keep their mouth shut, because they don't want to be accused of stirring up drama. They don't want to be accused of being dramatic. So for the rest of their lives, these girls should just keep their mouths shut, not to make any waves or not to make somebody else especially a boy or a man, uncomfortable. Makes no sense to me, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Like I said, in the description box, I am going to include a story that gives you a few more of the details that were leading up to this, and also has contact information if you want to just drop a line. Like I said, do not harass anybody. Do not use foul language. Remember that we're all grown-ups and we're actually trying to get something done about this. And the more excuses people have to dismiss you, whether that be because of your use of profanity or just being outright disrespectful, the more that people are going to dismiss you. So in stories like this, even though your emotions may want to take over and you might want to say things just exactly the way that you feel them, I would implore you to use your better judgment and remember that you want to come off sounding professional and sane, because that's what's going to make change happen at this point. Flying off the handle will not help any of us. Anyway, if you guys want to see just a plain fun video, because this one was a little too heavy, check out either of the videos on your screen. I have been a fool lately on some of these other videos. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. We just passed 60,000 subscribers today. Thank you all very much for doing it. When you hit the subscribe button, I just want to remind you to click on the bell and make sure that you're getting all notifications so you know anytime I upload. Thank you for watching. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.